Hi, Sarah. I was just hoping to be able to ask you a few questions about inquiry, and since you've been using this approach in your classroom, what were some of the first steps that you did in transitioning to using inquiry in your room?
I think the biggest thing was shifting from writing a lesson plan where I said, like, this is how I'm going to hook them, these are my action steps, and going from there was shifting to writing the questions instead of the activity piece so much. And so based on the questions, then that could help me guide what I would do to help kids be able to answer those questions.
So then why did you decide to make this transition?
I think with a more traditional approach to teaching in general, you are asking kids to remember your understanding. And with inquiry, you are using your understanding to help kids build their own. And that's just so much more powerful than me telling you, this is what I think is important for you to remember. Instead, you're helping them do that piece on their own, and it's far more memorable.
I'm hearing you say how that role for you has changed. So how would you talk about that, of your role as a teacher changing while you're using inquiry?
I think you do have to be a lot more flexible. Like when you are coming at it from a more traditional approach, you've written your lesson plan and you can pretty much expect how things are going to go. But when you're coming at it from a more inquiry approach, like by the end of the day, if I teach 6 different classes, they might end up in 6 completely different places, because instead of rigidly sticking to this flow, I'm asking questions, and based on what kids are saying and what their accurate thoughts are, what their misconceptions are, we're having to go different directions. So I think you have to give up some of that certainty about how your day will look.
Do you have any other advice for someone who's considering using inquiry in their classroom?
I would say the biggest thing to focus on is what your questioning looks and sounds like. It's really powerful to ask students open-ended, short answer but high thinking questions, as opposed to asking dichotomous yes/no questions, or telling them something. Like anytime I'm tempted to make a statement, I try to flip it into a question so that it's not me telling them what to think, it's them using what they've already learned to define that understanding themselves.
And what ways have you seen the mindsets of your students shift while using this method?
Well, I can tell you that initially they are very dissatisfied with the lack of affirmation they'll get, and with the lack of you telling them directly what they're supposed to be learning. Like, they want you to say, this is what you can do at the end of class today. Like, this is what you are capable of doing. This is what you have learned. And so instead, when you're asking questions and you're forcing them to do the work of figuring out the information, it's dissatisfying for them. So you have to be, ready for your students to be very frustrated that you're not saying yes or no, and not telling them concretely, like, this is the right understanding. And that, you have to be a good facilitator in those moments. So, and I'll even turn that into a question if they'll say, why won't you just say yes or no? I'll say, why don't you think I'm saying yes or no right now? And they get it, and it takes a month or so, and then they're totally on board.
How do they feel then after about that month or so?
Afterwards, they're not expecting it anymore. You just have to break the expectation that they're viewing you as the holder of all information, and instead that you are a facilitator. So I think at the end of that month, they're more comfortable taking risks and sharing thinking, because instead of hearing yes, that's right, and everybody else's thinking shuts down, or not quite, not right, it's safer to give an answer. And there's, it just feels like a more conversational learning environment, instead of me ask a question, you give the answer, we move on.